learn. There is no time better than now to learn. Learn coding. That's the easiest thing in the world right now, because the coding agents are so good. You could build so many interesting software, like, grab something in your kitchen that is boring and build software to fix it, right?
Welcome to We Are All Worker Bees, a podcast about what work actually looks like right now. The uncertainty, the shifts, and the real people navigating it from every angle. I'm Nikki Bajenski.
And I'm Heiko Roth.
AI has quickly become part of how we work. A first draft written for you, research pulled together in seconds, tasks that used to take hours now taking minutes. Somewhere in there, the work you were hired to do starts to look a little different. Today, we're talking to Amir Feizpour, founder and CEO of AI.Science, who's been working in AI for over a decade and is now helping companies bring AI agents into their day-to-day work. We'll hear how Amir is using AI in his own work, including an AI mentor that runs most of his coaching program, and where he still steps in himself. And we'll explore the idea of job description loss. That's not jobs disappearing, but roles slowly shifting as certain parts of the work changes. If your role has started to shift, this conversation will help you make sense of where it's heading. Let's kick this off with, so what is the demand and scale that you personally are seeing when it comes to companies adopting AI agents into their teams these days?
There is definitely a difference between wants and reality. So everybody obviously wants AI agents everywhere, doing everything. But, it takes a lot of infrastructure to get it right, because yes, we want them to go out and do things, but I usually compare AI agents to an overeager intern. So they can do a lot of things. They have access to a lot of knowledge from the internet and, hopefully internal knowledge bases, but they don't have the level of judgment that we hope, right?
Yeah.
So we do want them to be used everywhere, for all of our staff to use it. But, that's a growing trend for sure, but, definitely not at any level that is very, very meaningful, except in some areas where there has been significant investment from model providers as well as, companies, for example, coding agents. We have not written one line of code manually in months now. The reason is that coding agents are very good at writing the code itself, so we're spending our time on everything before and after writing code. So there is definitely a bit of a spectrum in terms of how well adopted they are currently.
And what would you say right now in these kind of, we'll still call them early stages, even though you've been using it and it sounds like you're pretty well versed in it, but what do you think the initial goals are around integrating AI into a business, like right now?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think about it along two different axes. One is efficiency and one is effectiveness. On the efficiency side, obviously everybody is interested in productivity. Like, can we get more lines of code written? Can we get more marketing copy written? Can we get more outbound sales emails sent, right? That's the efficiency. The other axis is effectiveness. Can we increase the effectiveness of these interactions? Like, if I'm about to hop on a sales call, can I use AI to get smart about a company I'm about to talk to in 5 minutes instead of an hour, right? So that's more effectiveness. Like, I'm showing up as a more effective salesperson, as a more effective technology leader, or whatever my role is, because now I can be more effective. Like, I'm using my judgment in the process to decide what I need to be smart on. So I think a lot of people are over-indexing on the efficiency side and not enough on the effectiveness side. And I think that's where the goal is, right? Like, essentially at some point we're going to figure out all the automation necessary for the productivity that we want to do. And then we see that there are limits on it. Like, existing processes at some point are going to saturate on how efficient they can be. But then what is the bigger pie, right? Like, can we expand our top line revenue, for example, if we are more effective in how we work?
Yeah, one of the things I heard the other day, which was really effective, is performance management for agents doesn't really exist yet, right? So how do you manage the effectiveness of the outputs? And so one of the things I was wondering, what are some of the biggest challenges you run up against as companies and organizations are trying to adopt AI into their workflows?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously the range of problems are very, very different from company to company, but the common patterns that we see is, for example, quality control, as you were saying, right? For example, this agent is taking over part of my sales, staff. Like it is writing the emails they're sending, it is writing the proposals. Are these meeting our standards? That's a
Mm-hmm.
question that is not easy to answer because in traditional machine learning, we always have metrics like accuracy or this or that, but that doesn't work for agents. Like, it is very difficult to judge if a sales proposal is good, if a piece of software that is written by a coding agent, is it good or not, right? That's to some extent subjective, to some extent just hard to judge the quality because it's a 5-page proposal, for example. Like one portion of it might be good, one portion of it might not be. So it's like definitely quality control is a big one. I think a lot of people are sleeping on it and slowly waking up, especially the ones that are allowing agents to behave more autonomously in their business workflows. I'm personally very much against that because that's a huge reputation risk, and we are reading about it in news every day. So I always support the idea of, let's run agents for internal operations for as long as possible so that we can completely understand what they're good at and what they're bad at before we let them loose into client-facing operations. And then even like, on our website or anything that is directly user-facing.
What are you seeing in the field? Like, are you seeing organizations go through a learning period and then handing over agents and parts of their operations to the agents? Or are you seeing the more effective model to be individuals and humans and employees owning a suite of agents long term? What is more effective?
It is a bit of both, right? It is a maturity journey, is the way I like to think about it. Almost all organizations start from individual experimentation. So the individual experimentation is somebody in the company, probably 2 years ago got excited about ChatGPT, and they started doing a little bit of their work on the side with ChatGPT, right? And then over time, the firm was like, oh my God, people are using ChatGPT. We should have a governance about it. For example, at least tell them not to put these things in it. Then the next stage of maturity is that they realize that individuals are using AI, but the firm is not. Like each individual is doing things in their own function, but there is no firm-wide, enterprise-wide strategy, no enterprise standardization, no enterprise-wide enablement that everybody. So that's sort of the third stage. The fourth stage is that they realize that it's not just about individuals doing things here and there as point solutions, but rather we need an integrated system of machine agents and humans collaborating. Everything is integrated. Everything is at the point of use rather than go here, copy this, go to ChatGPT, do that. Like essentially everything is streamlined and controlled, but also set up in a way that compounds. Especially if you're a business that you sell data or knowledge, like professional services that are heavily impacted by these kind of things, their knowledge base is their gold mine. How do you set things up so that the knowledge base compounds as you use it? And then the fifth layer is, okay, great, like we opened up the bandwidth of our staff. What kind of services or products can we imagine bringing to the light of day, right? So there is definitely, companies can be anywhere on this journey. Teams within companies can be anywhere on this journey. And, there's always, like all of the disruptions we have seen in the past, there's always a movement towards hopefully more maturity if the companies are thinking correctly about it.
Does the supporting infrastructure exist right now to actually manage quality and agents at scale?
Not at all. Absolutely not.
No.
That's where rubber hits the road, right? As soon as you start thinking about, like a lot of people, when model as a service became a thing about, it's been a thing for several years, but 2 years ago it came to the forefront. A lot of people started assuming that, oh, we no longer need to care about our data because somebody else is giving us models. We don't have to train our own models. And that model, that mindset is proving to be completely wrong. And we've been saying, hey, we've been doing this for a while. That's not true. Be careful. But a lot of people are waking up to it and realizing that how clean your knowledge base is extremely important. How clean your data is extremely important. Because if you're just relying on a third-party model that is trained on the internet, all your competitors have access to that. So what makes you unique is your own data and knowledge base, and how well you set that up has a very, very direct implication for the output you're going to see from AI. I posted on LinkedIn a few days ago a picture of, if you put in garbage into AI, it will be garbage with a bow tie on it when it comes out. So it is very important to make sure that you do it right. Like what goes in is your unique value proposition. It's your unique data and knowledge, and it has a very, very direct impact on, and that's only the data. It's not about the processes. Like a lot of firms have to completely reimagine their processes because their processes are all about, human cognitive, information processing capacity. So a lot of things are set up around how well can humans handle these tasks. Now, like for example, when writing the code goes away because the coding agent is better than most of us, then the bottleneck of the process moves up to the code review and moves down to the ideation, right? Like how well are we doing in those? Like what can we do with AI to make that better? So there is a system-wide, reimagination that is necessary, and some firms are much better at doing that, and a lot of firms aren't. So where you lie on that journey is going to definitely impact how you behave there.
I think you've touched on something that we're seeing, and I hear a lot of other business owners talking about is, we spent the last 6 months, year building agents, and without that underlying data structure, they just can't be trusted,
Yep.
right? And you see that starting to become an accepted understanding. And some of the frustration around agents and their lack of trust really is around the lack of data structure.
Absolutely.
Right? So what are you seeing firms out there doing right now to address the structured data and to give their agents a better platform to build off of?
Yeah, we've seen a transformation like this before. Like DevOps was a transformation that allowed us in software engineering, allowed us to rethink how software development and operationalizing, software-driven business work. Like essentially, it integrated the two. And what we saw was that there was a need for new people processes, new tooling, as well as new ways to monitor and iterate on whatever it is that we are doing. Now we are seeing that that's moving up to the knowledge part of a business. So your documents, your data sources, and so on. And I call that a knowledge ops era, right? It is operationalizing knowledge. So the way companies are approaching that is, integrating their knowledge bases into AI tooling. Like that's the most basic thing that people do. Retrieval augmented generation is what they call it. RAG-based system or RAG agents is what a lot of people are building. But that's a scratch in the surface. Like what you really need to do is to figure out a way to create processes and tooling so that information from your knowledge base comes out, feeds AI, allows you to run your operations, then have monitoring processes and tooling to learn from those integrated pieces of knowledge in your operations and bring it back and say, oh, this is what we need to change about our prompt library. These are the knowledge pieces that we need to acquire and add to our knowledge base. Oh, we learned that this kind of behavior works well with the client and this one doesn't. So maybe we have to modify and essentially create a semi-automated process of your knowledge base compounding over time with integration into all of different toolings that all of your staff use in different functions. So companies who are doing it well are thinking about it as a system level change rather than, oh, can it help us write better emails, right?
I think that's fascinating because what I'm hearing is, you see so many workflow companies and vendors that are really slapping AI onto their existing workflows. And what I'm hearing you say is the problem is much more structural. I love that
Absolutely.
word, the knowledge ops. It's not a workflow automation. It's data structuring that's required.
100%.
And
And that's what we saw with machine learning, in the past 2 decades, right? Like the problem was never models. The problems were always infrastructure, data, and team processes, like human processes, right? And that's exactly the same thing. Like nothing about has changed. Like the hammer has changed, but all the problems are the same. Like it is still about data because data is the differentiation. It's about your knowledge base because that's your differentiation. It's about how humans work and how adaptive you are to a change that is probably disruptive. And then how well you understand how to piece together, like the workflow automations are one part of the solution. They're not all the solution, right? How do you piece that together with everything else to make a loop that is compounding and growing, like expanding over time, right? Because if, again, like the problem with point solutions is that they just move the bottleneck. They move the bottleneck from, okay, great, you solved your sales problem, but now your fulfillment is completely bottlenecked because they're getting so many leads now that you have no idea what to do with it, right? So you didn't think about this at a system level, you just made a tweak somewhere, and now the system is malfunctioning. We saw this in software engineering in 2025 quite a bit, and in the beginning of 2026, we are starting to see some solutions. Coding agents became so good that there was walls of text that were being dumped on code reviewers, senior developers in the team. Yeah, they were like, I have no idea how to keep up with reviewing all of this code. So that was just exactly the movement of the bottleneck from writing code to reviewing it and quality controlling. So you got to step back and think about it as a full system. I'm also like super interested in questions around, human machine collaboration, because at some point in the next 2 years, probably, agents are going to be so good that we're going to have emotional reactions to them. You are going to see them as coworkers. When you're working, the agent that is sitting on the side of your desktop, you're probably chit-chatting with it. You're probably given a task to do. At some point, it's going to be so competent that you might have emotional reactions to it and say, oh my God, would it take my job, right? So how does that work? What does that mean about the organization, right? Like, are people going to start sabotaging things? There are a lot of interesting human messiness that exists that is quite interesting to think about. And I'm talking to our economist collaborators or organizational design collaborators, and they're like, we don't know, we're all guessing. So I don't know where this is going, but it's
I was
definitely
going to
going
say,
super interesting.
who's shouldering that responsibility in organizations, the human element? I think that's fascinating.
I mean, it has to come from the executive board, right? Like it has to come, like we usually work with high touch professional services because this problem is very urgent there, right? Like they are selling the types of artifacts that is very much human trust and human, I call them emotional intelligence as a service businesses. Like this factor of we don't want AI to leak into what we are delivering is huge there. So in those cases, we are working with managing partners because those are the people on the top that are like, oh my God, like the organization is at a crossroad. Like either we figure out how to scale with the headcount that we have, and that's the first time in history we can do that, or the competitor is going to eat our lunch. Like the big tech firms are going to come down the market. Any tool that is consumer and prosumer is going to move up the market. And if you're not careful about what our value proposition is, everything is going to go away. But as I said, like since it is a system level change, it has to come from the executive board. Like, of course, like people lower in the hierarchy can definitely champion it, but the decision is going to have to, it is a strategic decision, right? Like it is like we see in the news that a lot of companies are, firing people because of AI, and we can have a whole conversation about that, if that's true or not. But, that to some extent comes from a short-sighted view of how things are happening. But again, like that's a decision that is coming from the executive level. So if the executive level is obsessed with efficiency, that's the type of outcome we're going to see. But if they understand that the big picture is the effectiveness, is a bigger pie that we can go after, then they're thinking about ways that the same number of staff can deliver much more value, can deliver much more, drive much more revenue ultimately, right?
So what is your advice to workers kind of caught in the middle, trying to adopt AI, wanting to use productivity tools to help drive the organization forward, but maybe questioning their role in that
Yeah,
future? What's the right approach? What are you seeing that works?
absolutely. I mean, that's definitely a tough position to be in, right? Things are moving so fast. Every week there is something new, right? So I definitely understand. Like I, as a person who's getting paid to stay on top of things, I can't. Like I admit, I probably look at 10% of things that are coming out because it's just not possible, right? Like let alone somebody whose job is finance, accounting, sales, whatever else that is not keep on top of AI. I would say, my top three advice would be inside the organization, ask for it. Like ask this executives, what is our plan? Where are we going? What tools are we using? Why are we using this? If this opens up my bandwidth, how are you going to use my bandwidth? So essentially creating a discourse with the executive team is definitely very important. If your executive team is not open to having that conversation, run before they lay you off, right? Like if they're not open about how this is going to impact this business, that's a red flag. Like you need to know that right now. You don't want to sit on your thumbs until a point where the executive comes back and says, we have AI efficiency, now you're redundant. Like that's not helpful to you, right? Like as a person in the lower ranks of an organization, you have to start a conversation now. You cannot wait for them to tell you what to do. You have to ask questions. What tools are we going to use? Why these tools? How is this going to impact my work going forward, right? The second advice is outside of work. So you're at work 9 to 5, but hopefully you have a little bandwidth after 5. You have a little bandwidth over the weekends. Learn. There is no time better than now to learn. Learn coding. That's the easiest thing in the world right now because the coding agents are so good. You could build so many interesting software, like, grab something in your kitchen that is boring and build software to fix it, right? Pick something in your household, do some hobby projects, etc., etc. Like learn how to build. That's very important. You can do that outside of work. And the third advice is, stay in the know as much as possible. There are a lot of online communities. Do not pay attention to social media. Obviously, social media is driving on rage and, exaggerating things. So definitely don't take what social media tells you at the surface level. Go find some trusted sources of information and just be locked onto them. See what they're thinking about, what they care about, what they're concerned about, and educate yourself about those things. When you hear they're, ranting about something that you don't know exactly what it is, go learn what it is, because that's the way you will stay in the... And definitely on the same note, I would say that try to tune out the noise as much as possible. It's very difficult to decide what is signal or what is noise, but do your best in judging and having some trusted advisor, some trusted network around you that can tell you these are the more important signal pieces that you have to pay attention to.
Yeah, I think for our listeners that maybe never saw themselves as being able to code and just saw that as a hurdle, the tools have just come so far so quickly, right? And they're not perfect, but your ability to take what an idea or a process that you see in your day-to-day life that is inefficient and that's consuming, taking your time. The tools are there now that you can just talk with these agents to allow to solve those problems, right? And so I think that's great advice that you might not have see yourself as a developer, but the world has changed, and they are approachable tools that can improve your productivity.
Absolutely. And you don't need to build Salesforce, right? Like you could just literally grab anything in your household. Like very recently, my wife was complaining about how long it takes us to, plan for grocery trips. And I threw together an app that she talks to, and it just does all the planning. Like, we need these ingredients. We already have these things in the fridge. or pantry, and here's the list, go. So there are so many little problems like this in the household that you could easily solve. And as you say, you could spend your time on the problem solving part, which requires very little expertise beyond being open to problem solving, right? And that's
I
the
love
fun
that.
part.
I started, I'm a father. I have a 8-year-old daughter now. And just being able to take what's in her head and create software,
100%.
from those little ideas, it's actually turned into a nice way for us to learn, but also just share time together. It's fantastic.
100%. I know a guy who has teenagers, and he's told them that you're only allowed to play video games that you create.
That's
Right?
great.
Oh, that's
That's
great.
amazing.
That's amazing. I was like, that's awesome. And they love it. Like, they build video games and they play it. And then they're like, I'm bored. I'm going to add this new thing to it now. That's amazing. Like, it is creating a culture of creation, right?
Yeah. And sticking to the theme of, educating ourselves and making sure that you're making the time to stay current in your thinking, we learned that you actually have an AI mentor that handles about 80% of your coaching boot camp that you have. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. On the previous topic, actually, one of the trends that we are seeing in the bootcamp is that probably now about 50 to 60% of people who do the bootcamp, which is building custom AI agents, are people with business background. Like, they're a salesperson, operations person, program person who's like, I feel empowered to build, so can I do your bootcamp to build this idea that I have? And that's amazing. That's crazy. Because of the very wide range of people that we deal with, it was very difficult for us. We've been doing this for about 2 years, the bootcamp, and it was very difficult for us to come up with a list of topics that is relevant to everybody, because somebody was like, this is literally the first day I'm writing code, or somebody was like a veteran software engineer, right? So in order to be able to apply this to everybody, like give them something of value, a very critical insight was that, I would give a lecture, for example, AI agents are this and that, and then I would notice that they grab the transcript and put it in ChatGPT or Claude, and they start talking to it and say, hey, what does this mean, da da da. And then at some point I was like, wait a minute, why am I bothering lecturing? I should just give them the prompts that they should use instead of doing all of this. So the idea started from there, and over time it evolved a little bit. But today, the way we teach the bootcamp is that on day one, you say, what do you want to build? And we say, great, we'll see you in 2 weeks with your demo. And people essentially go to Claude Code or anything in Claude family. Could be done elsewhere, but Claude is what we recommend. So essentially they go there, they set up a connection to an MCP server that has all of our lecture, question answers, and importantly, workflows that ideate with you, workflows that help you think about architecture, help you think. And all of these are like high level. It is actually quite adaptive. It can become as technical or as business oriented as you want. And people just do these coaching sessions with Claude. That is pretty much like 80% of how I talk and how I question their idea and what kind of feedback like. Sometimes they come back with their reflection from the workflow that says, yeah, I was thinking about this, but the workflow helped me think about it this other way. And I was like, it's literally like you talked to me. And that's great. Like, it has really allowed us to expand who we are serving in the bootcamp. And again, like, people who have written very, very few lines of code before the bootcamp in 7 weeks show up showing a software that is doing something interesting that, they sort of dreamed up over the weeks.
That's amazing. We should be sure to put that in the notes.
Absolutely.
So what are some of the moments in your boot camp then where a student actually is speaking with you instead of the AI? So like, how hands-on and like interactive are you specifically with those that attend the boot camp?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely don't want, since I build a lot of AI systems, I understand their limitations. So I definitely don't want this to be a completely self-directed experience. So for that 20% nuanced questions like, AI is saying this, but I'm not sure how to make this decision. We are available to them asynchronously on a Slack, and we answer their questions. We also have a mentorship model where we do more one-on-one coaching. Like, that's human, that will be myself and a few other human mentors we have. It's funny that I have to use that qualifier. And generally speaking, to a large extent, my job has become more of a, high level strategy or very detailed debugging kind of ideas, like essentially allowing them to come out of a rabbit hole that they're stuck in, or just, doing a little more hand holding if somebody is struggling with certain aspects. But I think the most important part is the accountability I create, the fact that I expect to see a demo in 2 weeks. That usually drives people to, stay committed to what they're doing, even when it becomes hard.
So, Amir, as we kind of round out our time here, let's just look to the future just briefly. You've talked about this idea of job description loss. I would love for you to share with our listeners a little bit more of what you mean by this and how workers can adapt to it.
Oh, absolutely. That's one of my favorite topics. And one of my pet peeves is people talking about job loss. And I think that's the more dramatic narrative that media loves. And that is not close to reality at all. Like, the reality is that job loss doesn't happen overnight. It happens over a period of time. And during that period of time, usually what is happening is a job description loss. This existed before everything we are experiencing right now. When I started working as a data scientist in 2016, in the 3 years that I worked as a data scientist / a data product person, the job definition of a data scientist drastically changed. Like, this is way before any of these things. Like, this is 2017, 2018 kind of timeline. Even then, the job description was changing really fast. So now, fast forward by a decade, that has accelerated significantly. So whatever your job description is today, like, as the founder and CEO of a company, every day that I wake up, my job description changes a little bit, right? Because I have my fingers in all kind of pots and everything is changing all the time. Therefore, every day I have to start thinking about something a little differently. And that is true about all roles. Like, if you're an analyst, if you're a software developer, if you're a salesperson, your job description is changing on a daily basis. The question is your organization enabling you to stay on top of that and evolve with it? Or is your organization going to let you alone and then come back and say, oops, there is redundancy now, right? And as an individual, are you paying attention to that job description change over time? And because a significant portion of your job description is going to probably be irrelevant. It just doesn't make sense for a human to do that anymore. Like, if it is something that, I don't know, a Zapier workflow with LLMs in it can do it better than you, more consistently, 24/7, then, what's the reason that you would do that, like, as a human, right? If AI can do, simple analytics better than humans can do, if your role is an analyst, then at some point in the future, it's not going to make sense for you to do that anymore. So your bandwidth is going to open up. So as an individual, how are you going to reuse that bandwidth? How is your organization behaving that is giving you indications about how that extra bandwidth is going to be used? Is it going to be seen as a redundancy, or is it going to be seen as, oh my God, we can now use this bandwidth to create a bigger pie?
Well, I thought Amir was fantastic. He brought a lot of that cutting edge knowledge and thought. And the notion of the job description loss, I truly think, is a great perspective for our listeners to embrace and understand that it's always been evolving. And even if things are evolving a little bit faster, the technology and the boot camps like he offers are out there to help people kind of stay in line with what they need to be doing.
I agree. I thought that just making it approachable, making it crystal clear that this is where things are going. I think it's our listeners have time to adapt, right? Yeah. Learn, focus more on outcomes, right? I think that really came across to me was the agents will do the tasks, right? So that part of your job description will disappear, but the agents won't be trusted, right? So how do you step in? How do you oversee those agents? Own the outcomes of those and really take the agents almost like a coworker, like he said, take them under your wing so that they produce a result for your organization. That's what's going to keep your job description will evolve, but that's what will keep your job. I thought that was fascinating.
Thanks for listening to We Are All Worker Bees, a podcast about the changing world of work and the people navigating it. If something in this episode resonated with you, follow us on LinkedIn or subscribe on your favorite listening app to keep up with new episodes. We Are All Worker Bees is a production of the Sonar Network, produced by Katie Lohr and edited by Jamie Carlisle. And if you want to keep the conversations going, whether you're job hunting or trying to hire, you can talk to Worker Bee 24/7 at workerbee.ai.